Chapter 29. Torok thought he saw a wolf on the bank. When he called, he did not appear, nor did the ravens. It was as if they knew what he'd done and condemned him for it. "But I didn't abandon her," he said. "She left me." A gust of wind ruffled the river and the alders stirred reproachfully. A gnarled oak scowled at him as he paddled by. He could not believe that Wren had left him and gone back to the open forest. Surely she would change her mind and come after him. But when he listened for the sound of a dugout, all he heard was the gurgle of water and the sighs of slumbering trees. "She'll be all right," thought Torok. "She can look after herself." "Of course she can, Torok. Why would she need your help, hunted by hostile clans in the heart of the deep forest with a soul eater on the loose?" As dawn broke, he stopped for a rest and something to eat. Everything reminded him of Wren. The early morning sun trembled in a patch of wood strawberries. If she'd been with him, she would have dug up a couple of roots and chewed them to clean her teeth. As he groped in the shallows for reed stems and crunched them raw, he remembered a day last summer when she'd tried to feed one to Wolf, and it had turned into a game of tag. All three of them had ended up in the water, Torok and Wren helpless with laughter, while Wolf splashed about, worrying his prize and play growling as if it were a lemming. "Enough," said Torok. On the opposite bank, an otter raised her sleek head and stared at him, then went back to munching the trout in her forepaws. Wreck flew down, grabbed the otter's tail in her beak and tugged. The outraged otter spun round, snarling at the intruder, and while her back was turned, Rip swooped and snatched the fish from her paws. Both ravens alighted near Torok and demolished the fish, sharing it, he noted, just as he and Wren shared everything. He struck the earth with his fist. When nothing was left of the trout but bones, Wreck flew onto Torok's shoulder and gently tugged his ear. Rip walked towards him and gazed at the medicine pouch at his belt, the swan's foot pouch which had been Wren's until she'd given it to him last spring. "Not you two," Torok told the ravens irritably. Rip waggled his tail and stared at the pouch. Without knowing why, Torok opened it and took out his medicine horn. Both ravens tilted their heads as if listening. Moodily, Torok turned the horn in his fingers. It was carved with spiky marks which looked like spruce trees. Fin Cadin had once told Torok that this had been his mother's sign for the forest, which was how he'd recognised the horn as hers. Now Torok saw what he'd forgotten. Twisted round the tip of the horn was a strand of Wren's hair, which he'd found in her sleeping sack when he was outcast. Slowly he unwound it. Rip hopped onto his knee, took the hair in its beak, and ran it through his bill as delicately as if it were preening a feather. Torok heaved a sigh. Wren had sent the ravens to help him last summer when he was soul sick, and he'd abandoned her, just as he'd abandoned Bale. The thought made him go cold. It was happening again. He'd quarrelled with Bale, and Bale had died. Now Wren. His fist closed over the strand of hair. He would go back and find her. He would make her come with him. Vengeance must wait a little longer. Jumping into the dugout, he turned it around and stared downriver. This time, the ravens went with him. Now Wolf was confused as well as worried. What was Tall Tailless doing? Ever since the bright beast had eaten the forest, Wolf had followed and not understood. He'd prowled around the great dens of the taillesses and watched them snarl at each other, then tear the strips of hide from their heads as they dragged in his pack brother, and Wolf had been about to leap to his aid when Tall Tailless had snarled at them. That terrible snarling blood hunger. It was not Wolf. Wolf didn't understand. It frightened him. Then he'd followed Tall Tailless and the pack sister to the fast wet, where they'd snarled at each other, and then Tall Tailless had abandoned her. A wolf does not abandon his pack sister. Was Tall Tailless sick? Was his mind broken? After that, Wolf had kept to the dark as he'd followed his pack brother up wet. Tall Tailless had called, but Wolf hadn't gone to him. Wolf hated hiding from his pack brother, but he knew with certainty, which came to him at times, that he could not go to him, although he didn't yet know why.